Let's learn all about loops in C#. Loops are required in order to run an instruction multiple times until a certain condition is met. So go ahead, fire up C#pad and let's begin. Let's begin by defining an integer called I equal to 0. This integer is going to be the counter that keeps track of how far round or how many times we've gone through our loop. The first loop we'll look at is a while loop, and this loop does things while a certain condition is or isn't met. So we have to place that condition inside of brackets. We will say while I is less than 100, open curly braces and close curly braces. Then everything we define inside of this loop will be run whilst I is less than 100. Let's have a console.writeLine and put value of I is equal to plus I dot to string. This will keep running as long as I is less than 100. So we need some way to increment I every time we go round. The first and most obvious way is to say I is equal to I plus 1. And that's perfectly legitimate. But in C#, there's a much shorter way of writing this. We simply say I plus plus, and this adds 1 to an integer. So every time the loop goes round, we add 1 to I. Let's see what happens when we click go. And we have I printed out 100 times, from 0 to 99. Now, can you see a place where we could get an error? I'll show you. Back in our original code, which I'm going to copy and paste, if we had neglected to put in I++, watch what happens when I click go. It spins and spins forever. And it says my execution took way too long. And that's because the while loop kept running forever because the value of I never changed. And this is called being stuck in a loop. It's something you obviously want to avoid in your code because you cannot execute the rest of your program if you're stuck inside of one bit. With that in mind, I'll show you a better way of constructing a loop. So let's refresh this page so we have a fresh window. And this loop I'm going to show you is called a for loop. For, and then we define how many times this loop goes around by saying integer I equals 0 until I is less than 100, and then each time we go around, add 1 to I with I++. Now, I say this is better because every time you write this loop, it forces you to have a beginning, an end condition, and an operator to increase I. You could also have I minus minus, which would defeat the whole point of this. But I tend to find that having a for loop helps me avoid that endless loop problem that we have in while loops. So let's try our console.writeLine inside of this loop. I is equal to plus I dot to string. Let's click go, and there we have our values printed out. You'll also notice This is a lot shorter and more compact when we come to run our code. It also has the advantage of being able to use I again. So I'm going to copy that, I'm going to paste it in, and again, and again. Now, because these I's only belong to the for loop, they won't affect the next for loop at all. So in each of these for loops, I will always start as 0, and C# looks at them as completely different variables. If I had a while loop, and I had defined my int I equals 0 outside of that, then I would have to be very careful of all of those values of I interfering with multiple while loops. So when you come to create loops, my sincere recommendation to you is to always use a for loop if you can.